As many of you know, I have been interviewing all different kinds of people and talking about addiction primarily. I think that that is a big one, probably more common than narcissistic abuse. And Gab has been very helpful in this. I have found a lot of people on Gab that are willing to talk about this issue. So I am joined today by Maximus, a fellow blabber, who is going to share his story with us on addiction.
Awesome. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. If you want to just give a little introduction and tell us about yourself, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Maximus. I'm a 23-year-old Orthodox Christian. I've been Orthodox for about a year, so I'm still a catechumen. So I will be baptized as Maximus, but my spiritual father had asked that I remain somewhat anonymous.
Yes.
So I'm going to respect that. But yeah, I'm a musician, and I'm doing my best to follow Christ. I have experienced addiction pretty much my entire life since I was about 12 years old. And I actually have suffered narcissistic abuse as well from my mother specifically. So we can get into that a little bit too.
Oh, we probably relate. My mother, I'm not sure. Well, I haven't met anybody yet that can kind of top her crazy, but you never know. I am also sort of a baby in the faith. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school. And, I had a period of time where I moved away from the church and I thought like all organized religion was bad. One of our priests was a pedophile at the Catholic school I went to, and he was always weird. He never molested me or anything, but he used to make us like kiss him on the cheek. And for some reason, I thought that was very creepy. Like even at a young age, I knew that there was something weird about the way he did it. Like it was not like there was something off about it. Not that like kissing somebody on the cheek is inappropriate or wrong, especially like a priest or something like that. But there was just something off about him where like my spidey sense was like, I don't like this guy. And they told us that his mother was sick and like he had to go back to Ireland to take care of her. And I think they even raised money to like send him off. And they just moved him, it turns out, to another parish and covered up like what he was doing. And it was years later that it came out that he was a pedophile. And so that experience was very upsetting for me, that this was just kind of covered up, swept under the rug, and they just moved him somewhere else where he could do the same stuff. So that was something that was very upsetting for me. But I never had I never had a time where like I didn't believe in Jesus or anything like that. I just started thinking that like all churches were corrupt or something. And so it was only through a friend a couple years ago that I found Orthodoxy, and a lot of my issues with Catholicism were addressed by my priest, and we talked about them, and I don't see the same issues there. So I think it's just been such a blessing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I actually have a friend, he was Catholic. Recently, he left his church because his priest was molesting boys, and he had been to liturgy with me before, and he enjoyed it, but he's about 2 hours away from the nearest Orthodox church, so it's a messy situation. But
that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say the same that like I had a point where I didn't believe, or didn't have a point where I guess like I wasn't consistently Christian. I mean, I dabbled in the occult actually quite a bit up until right before I converted. And yeah, like literally a week before I was practicing, magic and, letting demons into my life. And that, yeah, it was, yeah, it was, it was an intense conversion experience because I went from literally switching sides. I switched teams.
Yes.
And so, I mean, yeah, it's a miracle that I'm here, but I was we'll get into it a little bit, but yeah, right before I converted, I was like, getting back into stimulants, meth specifically. And so, just the fact that I converted from a place like that without any connection to Christ whatsoever is just beyond me.
Yes, that wasn't you.
Right.
That
Yeah.
wasn't you
Yeah.
doing
No, it
it.
is. Yeah. Glory to God for sure.
Yes,
It's just like,
exactly.
I just don't understand it.
It's so
And
funny how that happens.
yeah, I'm, the least deserving, but it's completely flipped my life, like 180. And, slowly over time, different things that I was doing, because I was still physically dependent on specifically Xanax. And do you know what Subutex is?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was physically dependent on both of those things the day that I stepped into the church. So like the more I kind of stuck around and started to feel, my inner disposition kind of change about different things, the more I felt uncomfortable with those things that I was doing, even though, it was a crutch and something that was dragging me down. My body needed it. And so, I mean, I suffered seizures. Like I went to the hospital a couple times because the Subutex withdrawals, the Xanax withdrawals, I had seizures. And then the Subutex withdrawals, I was sick for 30 days, like could not eat anything, couldn't drink. So I had to go to the hospital because I was dehydrated. It was brutal for sure.
Jeez, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, I have talked to other people who went from the occult to Orthodox Christianity. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Witkoff,
Oh
his
yeah,
channel, Brother Augustine.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love this stuff.
Yeah. So he had a wild story too of like, I think he did some website for like one of these like Satanist organizations. I think it was called like the Joy of Satan or something like that. I mean, talk
Edgy.
about like spiritual delusion. And
Right.
he's able to laugh about it now, which is a good thing, but he just had a really interesting story too. And I don't see many like Orthodox Christians leaving the church to go into the occult. It seems to be people that are in that kind of spiritual delusion, like they eventually make their way to Christ.
Yeah.
That's more common, which is very interesting. While I never had a period of time where I like didn't believe in Jesus, I did have a time of spiritual delusion where I thought like Hermeticism was like true Christianity or something. Like
Right.
I thought it was like Christian mysticism, and same with like alchemy, which was just absolutely retarded. But
Yeah.
that was during my phase of like organized religion is bad, and
Right.
and all the lies that they tell you about like how Christianity was actually derived from blah blah blah. It's just all kinds of nonsense. And I tried to like look into that stuff, but I never had like a time where I didn't believe in Christ. I always believed in him, and I just thought maybe they were lying to us about him, and the stories that they told weren't true. And none of that obviously was the case. I kept coming back to like, this is just stupidity.
Yeah.
But I'm very
there's all types
familiar
of
with this
demonic
stuff.
lies
Yeah.
there's all types of demonic lies, and the whole purpose of it is to get you away from like the true salvific aspect of Christianity. So as long as like Jesus isn't, who he proclaims to be in Christianity, then it doesn't really matter what kind of, Jesus you have. And like there was a point where I was like kind of like, into Gnosticism and stuff. I mean, I mean, less so like into Gnosticism, more like the idea of Christ that I had was more like Gnostic. Like I there was like a point in my life where I was an edgy Satanist when I was younger, because I had like an atheist phase when I was like 13. And then after that, like atheism kind of serves as I don't know, like a pipeline to darker things. So like I went from atheism to like Satanism, like LaVeyan Satanism, which Anton LaVey was not an atheist. He was a liar. I mean, he was trying to destroy people's souls. And then from there, that opened the the path to the occult, because I feel like, the staunch materialist kind of, philosophy is really stupid. And I think everyone innately kind of knows that there's something else than what we can, touch and feel. And so after I got out of the kind of atheist mindset, and I believed in spiritual things, it kind of opened me up to have spiritual experiences completely outside of Christ, which is going to lead you to demons and stuff. So
Yes, absolutely. And I think drugs probably ties into that. It's probably a good way to segue
100%.
yeah, into that discussion, because I know people do things like like MDMA or like peyote and all this other stuff, trying to have like a mystical experience, and that's not how it works. You'll encounter something, but it's not anything good. You'll encounter entities, but they're demons. Yeah, so I think that's very sad. And people seeking for like contact with God, that they end up contacting demons. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. Start how you first started using substances. What was the first thing that you tried?
Okay, so yeah, so the first thing I ever tried was smoking weed, and I think I was about 12 years old. I was, yeah, I mean, I was interested in it because my older brother smoked, and I just thought it was kind of cool. And like, there's like those late night movies where they make like stoners seem just like, fun and interesting, and that seemed like just something to do. And at that point, like I said, my mother, she was pretty, I don't know, she has some like mental health problems, like bipolar and stuff, and she would be extremely brutal on me. Like she even, like, maybe she's a teacher, and she made me write down an essay on how I'm a narcissist for basically no reason. And it was kind of projection, but she would also make me like force me to read the Bible and show how these parts applied to like how broken I was, which there could be application to that. But I was like a little kid, and I'm being, this stuff is being, pushed on me, for just small things. But anyway, so I was grounded a lot. And so I just decided, if I can't hang out with my friends, I'm going to go sneak out. And so I started hanging out with, worse people, older kids that were just kind of losers. And I snuck out one day. This is the first time I smoked weed. I snuck out and went to this kid's house. He was like, I think he was like one of the 15-year-old kids or something. And he gave me, so he rolled a joint and he passed it to me, and I hit it. And, I didn't really feel it, but I just felt that it was like, I felt cooler doing it. And, that just kind of started my intrigue into that kind of stuff. And so I would sneak out often and smoke weed and get pretty high, especially like I did it a couple times when I was 12, but I really started whenever I was about 13. And my parents found out. I don't really remember how they found out, but they drug tested me, and they decided to send me away to a rehab in Arkansas. And I was completely away from anyone that I knew, and I was the youngest person in the facility, because I think the age group was originally supposed to be 14 to 18. Wow. And I was 13, but they made an exception for me. So most of the kids there were about like 16 to 18, I'd say, and they were all doing like actual like I don't think weed is a good thing. Like I don't think people should be smoking weed, but the people, Hunky, hold on. Sorry, my cat's meowing. All right, yeah. So like a bunch of the kids that were there were doing meth and psychedelics and MDMA, and they would kind of like mess with me because I was there for weed, and like you're
That's so
you're just here for
bizarre.
weed. Yeah, they would mess with me. So like but I learned a lot about drugs. Like there was a few people like, and I was like, oh, these actually, the MDMA, that sounds like fun, and I just kind of had, after I left that place, I had like, I don't know, it was like a goal for me to try all of these things. I was there for like 90 days. And so whenever I got out, you know, I was still in middle school, so I didn't have access to drugs that much, but I had a friend that was prescribed Adderall. And so we were like little shitheads, and we decided to take it during class. And I really enjoyed that. But then once I came home, um, my dad, he used to do speed when he was younger, so he noticed it immediately.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and they sent me back to that place. And so yeah, so like um, whenever I got there, I just couldn't really do it again, because it was kind of like a military style place, and it was just kind of brutal. Like, there, like I was just getting picked on the whole time, and it was like being an outcast in a group of outcasts. So it was like, I don't know,
Right. That
levels to.
it sounds sort of like The Family, which was like a cult like recovery group that was around in like the 80s and 90s. It was very popular, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, but they used like bullying and peer pressure and like weird things to try to like control people. And
Yeah,
they didn't really assist anyone in recovery. It was more like a money-making venture and trying to keep the kids there as long as possible. And just bizarre stuff. There's a
yeah, it
documentary
was
on
really.
it. It's creepy.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I mean, it was a strange place. They like, I don't know, the counselor that I had, like, she was, all of them were recovering addicts or whatever, and the counselor that I had was always trying to be like sexy to like the like younger kids, because
Oh my
everyone was like,
goodness.
everyone's like, going through puberty and all that, or like, you know they're boys and they haven't seen a girl in a long time, and she kind of like played off of that. It was really weird, and she was like in her 40s, and like just
Oh,
like looking back on it, it
gross.
was, yeah, it was like, what are you doing? Like, she'd always talk about sexual stuff, but it was, yeah, it was
Ew.
bizarre. Yeah, it was very strange. But whenever I went there the second time, I really, I just couldn't do it again. And me and this kid decided that we were gonna run away. And so we like packed up our stuff, and I guess someone told on us, so they took our shoes for a day. And then once they gave us back our shoes, we ran out. And so that's like whenever I started getting experience with more drugs, because we ran and there was cops looking for us everywhere. We were hopping fences, and we ran into these kids, and this is like in the hood in Arkansas. So I was like the only white person in this area. And there was a group of kids that just saw that we didn't belong out there. And so they asked us what was going on. They let us actually come in, and they like smoked us out and gave us one of the kids. He like pulled out 30 pills, which were, it was Robitussin, like DXM, and he gave it to me. And I didn't know what it was. And he's like, hey, just take these. And he gave me 30 pills. And I was like, all of them? And he said, yeah. So
Oh,
I took all of
geez.
them. Yeah. I took all of them like an idiot, and then got really messed up. And it turns out he gave me the wrong kind because it had like blood thinners in it.
Oh my
And I ended up,
gosh.
yeah, I had like, we were smoking with them, and I like started like seeing black a little bit. Like my vision just kind of started getting like tunnely, and I stood up because we were going back inside, and everything just went black. And I just hear them say like, "Oh shit, are you good?" And I said, "Oh, my bad. I tripped over a rock," because I just knew that I was on the ground. I didn't know what happened. And they were like, "There's no rocks. We're still like inside." And I was like, "Oh shit." And then I just see myself out of my body, and they're picking me up, and I'm staring down at myself. And I just remember thinking like, this is how it ends, and I'm like 13, 14 years old. I
That's
don't, I don't remember. My
horrifying.
memory is not the best, but I just remember looking down at my body and like, this is how, the story ends. And then they're carrying my lifeless body inside. And then once they get me on the couch, they're trying to like give me water and bread. And I hear them say, "What do we do with his body if he dies?" And then I like snapped into my body, and it was intense because like, these people, I don't know. I mean, these were losers, you know, but they were like totally ready to just dump me out because they knew that I ran away and stuff. They're ready to just throw away my body like it was,
Wow.
you know, nothing. And I'm, you know, it was intense. So I had to get out of there, and I ended up breaking into a abandoned house. And you know, the kid that I was with, he stole one of their phones so he could call his family, and he got picked up. And I was walking around trying to like find something to eat because I hadn't showered or eaten in a few days. I think I was out there for about like 4 days total.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so like I'm walking around, you know, and there I found those kids. So I walked up to them just to, you know, see if I could get some food or something. And I saw there was a group of black kids um like down the street, and one of them came up to one of the guys that was with me, and they were talking about something. He was just the guy that was with me was shaking his head at him, and then he left, like, and went back. The black guy went back to his friends, and the dude that I was with looked at me and he said, "You need to either run or get ready." And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, I don't know where I am. And then next thing I know, the guy comes back and he's like squaring up to me. And this dude's like, he's at least 17 years old. You know, these are like big black dudes. I'm like a prepubescent white kid, you know, and it was and so like I was like, I'm not gonna fight you, man. And you know, I turned around and they just started swinging, and I got jumped. And so after that point, you know, I was just, you know, I was in a low spot spiritually. And I just, you know, felt like worse than dirt. And I was like, all right, I need to call my dad. I need to just get out of here. So but I do remember, it's actually interesting looking back because I thought this guy was an asshole at the time. But I was walking, I'm crying, I'm all beat up and haven't showered. He can probably smell me all the way from his yard. And he's like mowing his lawn, and he just looked at me and he said, "Hey, Jesus loves you." And I was just like, "Screw you, dude." Like, you know, like
Aw.
I'm all beat, you know, it's like, I don't need to hear that right now. I like need some help. But like, you know, looking back at that, it's actually kind of profound. But so yeah, my dad picked me up, uh, you know, and we didn't talk for a little while because they didn't really know what to do with me. And they, you know, I was just getting into shit, like bad shit already, you know, and I was really young. And a lot of this had to do with, you know, the fact that I had experienced, you know, abuse, like physically and sexually and stuff when I was a younger kid. So they just like had no idea how to, you know, deal with me like lashing out in these ways. And
Right.
they were starting to separate at this point. Like they were getting ready for the divorce and everything. So it was just a rough situation. So I when I came back, um, I did good for a while. Like I didn't, you know, do any drugs or anything. But once I got into high school, I started smoking weed like all the time. And then, you know, my mom, because I had, you know, social anxiety and like issues with depression and stuff, where that's what they didn't see like the spiritual like root of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, because around the point, I'm kind of all over the place. Like my story might not be 100% linear, so I might like jump back to places. But I basically around the time that my parents started like split and were divorcing, um, they we were like in a Protestant kind of church, like a non-denominational uh, church deal, and I had already believed that this stuff wasn't true. Like I was, I don't know, I kind of understood by the time I was like 13 that maybe God's real or something, but this isn't what the truth is because none of it made any sense. The way that I understood, you know, Christ was you just believe that this man existed and then you're good. Like you ascend to heaven through some kind of knowledge that we're given, and that's it. And you're saved and you're good. You don't have to worry about anything, you know, and that didn't make sense to me. I was like, what? Like, you know, so it just seemed like all BS. So I just kind of took it as that. At first I was like kind of agnostic, and then I got into like around this time when I was 15, I was like edgy atheist. God's not real. It's all just a delusion. you guys are just too afraid to admit that you don't actually know all the answers. Science disproves God, whatever's, immature, stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then like I started like to be edgy, to like own the Christians. I got into like Satanism and stuff because, just to like, I don't know, I guess make my family members upset, and I don't know, just be rebellious, I guess. And
Right.
yeah, so like I was like smoking weed and like started getting interested in reading about like Buddhism, and then I started getting interested in like psychonaut stuff around that time too. When I was about 15, I started like reading into like Terrence McKenna and all this hippie nonsense.
Were
Like,
you reading like Peter J. Carroll?
no, no,
Okay.
I wasn't. But I was just like, I wasn't even getting into heady intellectual stuff. I was mainly just like reading trip reports and watching videos on YouTube, and thought that I was like smarter than everyone. It's like really, really retarded. But like by the time I was 16, that's whenever I had my first like experience with research chemicals. Do you know anything about those?
What kind?
Like 25I and BME.
No, I did know about something they would mix with ecstasy. It was like C2B or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
2CB.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so
Gosh, I've done that.
yeah, me too, me too. So like the 2C chemicals are actually a lot more researched on and have a longer history of human use than the 2,5 chemicals.
Okay.
Basically, they're like, I think the first, I might be wrong, but I think the first human use recorded is in like 2002 or something. So they're really new. And whenever I was in high school, these things just kind of started blowing up because they're really cheap,
Hmm.
and they got you really high. But they're really bad for your brain. And there's been tons of people who've overdosed on them. But I took it and I watched Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That was horrifying. That's a terrible movie. I
Hmm.
watched that movie. I tried to watch that movie not too long ago, just to like kind of break it down and like try to like read the like symbolism and stuff. That movie is demonic, dude. Like, I don't know, like it hits differently whenever you have like a Christian understanding of things. But anyways,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really enjoyed the experience of kind of being like out of my head, and feeling like I had these you know this spiritual experience, that like I kind of understood the reality outside of myself more, and I
Right.
became like obsessed with it. And so I got really big into psychedelics and MDMA by the time I was like I basically, so I moved back in with my dad, and because my mom kicked me out for not taking Prozac and Risperdal. Like, I wouldn't take it because
Jeez.
it messed with my head. And it was like those kinds of medications don't do anything. They don't even actually get to the spiritual root of the issue. Like, these problems
Correct.
are like, they're trying to fix the chemical impulses in your brain, but they're not actually getting to what's behind the chemical reactions that you're having, because that's not the cause of
Right.
it. Like, the chemical
Exactly.
reactions are not the cause of the issue. The cause is your soul and man's inner disposition towards God, and like all the anxieties that man feels. Actually, Father Seraphim Rose in Nihilism, he says something along the lines of the anxiety of modern man is the soul returning to the nothingness from which God created. Which I thought, whenever I read that, I was like, that's it. Like, that's really what's going on, because man is like, we've removed ourselves so far from the like the logos, like
Hmm.
the logic and order of reality that's a person. We've moved so far from that, you know we are miserable, and we're removed from the source of life. So
Yeah.
anyways, I wouldn't take that stuff because it messes my head. And she kicked me out because she, at this point, like, she left the Protestant church. She decided that it was all BS, and she um you know like, both my parents, my dad, um he told me that after my mom divorced him, he said that like God's not real. And at this point, and whenever he said that to me, I was like, I had already kind of been through that breakdown, and it was sad to see my dad like that. And I, I had to kind of be there, for him through that. But I didn't have the answers either. I thought at this point, like whenever I started doing psychedelics and stuff, I was like, I had the belief that God is like a force